With the new patch in Helldivers 2 shaking up the meta, I wanted to answer the question of what's the best build in the game this patch, and I have a surprising answer for you.
Meta this, meta that. Have you ever met a f***ing girl before?
Many people talk about the meta. We see nerfs and buffs based on what the devs think the meta as well. And a lot of people say that one specific weapon or one specific loadout is the meta, or it's the best, or the most overpowered, or this or that. But the real answer is there is not a specific loadout or set of weapons that will instantly make you able to beat Helldive difficulty. It's how you build your loadout to be self-sufficient, use teamwork strategies, and understand the enemy's mechanics. I mean, I've ran the spear in plenty of Helldive missions, and regardless of how buggy the lock-on is, I've still rarely lost a game bringing that weapon with me. Because like I said, understanding the enemy mechanics and solid teamwork is much more important to completing missions than it is to bring a meta loadout. And it's much more fun that way. Now, don't worry, I didn't clickbait you, because we'll be going over 2 loadouts for each faction, as well as detailed tips and tricks, which will help you get better at the game. And this is going to be a giant deep dive on how to make a good loadout and also understanding enemies so you know what to bring with you. There's going to be tons of timestamps in the description, as well as links to other videos that cover enemy mechanics more in depth than this video will, but I will be referencing tons of stuff from those other videos, so go ahead and check out the description to skip around to what loadout you're most interested in. And if this video helps you out, be sure to like and subscribe, and let's dive right in. So when we're looking to make our loadout, we're building it in a self-sufficient way, or we're building it to complement our teammates. The first thing you want to look at is what are your teammates running. If they're all running anti-tank options, then go for a more mobbing build. Go for something that'll clear hordes, and vice versa. Now, another quick tip I have when choosing what you're going to bring with you is if you see a teammate with a backpack weapon, pick the same exact backpack weapon and just follow them around and team load them whenever they pull it out. Team reloading is actually a very powerful mechanic, but rather than trying to get someone to wear your backpack and do it for you, pick the same backpack weapon as someone else, and then when your backpack is out of ammo, ask them to come over and hop on yours. It's much more likely they'll be willing to do this since you just did it for them and you have the same weapon. So getting into the loadouts on the Terminid side of things, I'll be covering an anti-tank loadout and then a horde clear loadout. And these are 2 builds in the current patch that I find very fun and effective. And depending on how I'm feeling that day, or depending on what my teammates are running, I consider this the meta for myself because this is the most entertaining tactic available, and it completely clears everything that the bugs have to throw at me. So first, let's go over an anti-tank build. Now, some people may still feel more comfortable running around with the Quasar Cannon and a backpack slot, but others may want to try out a new option since it got nerfed. And to be honest, regardless of what you want to do, I think the best anti-tank launcher this patch is the Recoilles rifle. It is the peak damage anti-tank right now for firing off fast and accurate, well-placed shots. It also got a hidden reload speed buff this patch. Now you just need to practice some good technique with the Recoilles rifle and then it becomes very easy to use. So this launcher used to have a 3-stage reload, and it still does, but you can effectively now treat it as a 2-stage reload. The first stage is pulling out the empty shell. Once this is done, you can swap to your primary, whatever you need to do until you're ready to go for the second stage. Now notice the moment the new canister is inserted into the launcher. The launcher is instantly reloaded and ready to go. There's no need to lock the top anymore. And this is a total of a 4-second reload, each stage only being 2 seconds. Now, instead of swapping weapons, you can also cancel the rest of the reload animation by just pressing your stratagem button. And the second technique with the Recoilless rifle we're going to be talking about is kiting. Now, kiting enemies is using their attack animations to create predictable movements and completely exploit them and kill them easily when they're caught off guard. Now, if you're at a distance from a Bile Titan, you don't have to worry about this, but sometimes the Titan is focusing you and closing in on you and attacking you. So what you need to do is kite him and consistently kill him in 2 shots. Now, I did a video recently on how Bile Titans take the most damage while they are not in their spit animation. You want to get distance from the Bile Titan or get elevation above them, and do not try to shoot them if you're directly below them, because I find that's the most often that I don't get a proper shot off. And like I said, apply your Recoilless rifle shots directly to their foreheads.
Head on, apply directly to the forehead.
So to kite a Bile Titan, you need to get about 20 to 30 meters in front of them and bait out their spit attack or their melee attack. Then you want to run a little diagonally away from them to not take full damage from the spit, but you will often be slowed or you may need to pop a stim pack. Now, after firing your first shot, you can instantly start the reload right there if there's no other small mobs nearby. But if there are, then use any stun grenades or shoot your primary until you're ready to get the reload off. And Kite the Bile Titan, get your reloads off and get 2 shots directly in his forehead, and repeat this process until you kill the Titan. But since we're using the recoilless rifle, another amazing way to take out multiple Bile Titans quickly is the team reload. I mentioned earlier, just match a backpack weapon with a teammate and team reload them. But if you play with friends, you can easily convince one of them to reload your recoilless rifle for you if you can show them that you can take out multiple Bile Titans fast. And instead of bringing 2 recoilless rifles, you can have them bring a supply pack and you wear their supply pack and they wear your recoilless rifle backpack. And this way they can bring their own support weapon that doesn't require a backpack. Now, for the stratagems to pair with this anti-tank build will depend on your primary weapon. Personally, I recommend the Plasma Punisher this patch. It just got buffed, it feels pretty great, and it's really fun to use a new weapon. Now, this weapon is great at mobbing, but more importantly, it's great at staggering larger enemies like the green bile spewers and the stalkers. But what's really cool about this weapon is it can pretty easily kill chargers. Now, you want to aim the shots below its chest, and you can take them out, and you can save rocket ammo this way. Now, keep in mind, this is a splash weapon, so you probably want to bring a Redeemer as your secondary. And also, stun grenades pair greatly with this because you want to keep enemies mostly away from you. Now, if you do want to use the grenade pistol to help your team out with bug holes, then the Breaker Incendiary, the Sickle, but honestly, I would recommend either the Dominator or the Punisher. The Dominator and Punisher also notably have high stagger for stalkers and bile spitters. And since we're on the topic of stalkers, one quick tip for them is to simply spam any amount of damage the second that you see them. Stalkers are made to eat your reinforcements, but if you can get enough damage into them the second you see them, they will stop attacking and fly away for a little bit. Now, like I said, I'm enjoying the Plasma Punisher and the Redeemer. Since it was recently buffed, I really recommend trying out that weapon right now. But since the Punisher Plasma is a splash weapon, let's talk about another way to kite enemies with it. Because sometimes when that group of hunters starts to swarm you, what you want to do is constantly run away from them, but make sure you're looking at them and just press your trigger. This will automatically make your character turn around and shoot, but you can keep moving backwards. And this will also help you learn the spacing of the Punisher because you can actually shoot this gun pretty close to yourself, just not directly in front of you or directly on yourself. And I recommend, until you learn the spacing with this weapon, wear the 50% explosive resistance armor until you get used to it, and then you can put back on some medic armor or even a extra grenade armor so you can get 2 more stun grenades. So what about the other stratagems to pair with this build? Well, we have all of the larger enemies covered, so we want to run some crowd clearing stratagems. The orbital airburst strike is a great option for bug breaches that trigger. I almost exclusively save them just for bug breaches, because if you only use them on bug breaches, it's always off cooldown for the next one. Next, let's use an Eagle airstrike because this can deal with mobs, but it also has heavy penetration, which can damage Bile Titans. It can fully kill chargers if it gets direct hits on them. Again, stun grenades recommended. And it can also kill Shrieker nests if you have the upgrade. If you don't have the upgrade, it'll just probably take 2 or 3 charges. And then in our last slot, I'm running the Gatling Sentry. Now, the Gatling Sentry is a slightly underrated pick in my opinion, just because I don't see many people running turrets. It's a defensive option that if placed properly, it can get 50 plus kills easily on mobs all on its own. And also, enemies will often focus it. It's actually pretty nice for Bile Titans since they'll go to attack that first, and you can get those 2 headshots, and you don't even have to kite them to get the 2 shots off. Now, on the other hand, if you see a charger rush at your turret, try to stun it instantly or even just kill it with your recoilless rifle, because if a charger runs over your turret, you really kind of lose all the value you get from it. Now, this anti-tank loadout is self-sufficient. It's going to cover everything that the bugs throw at you. And you'll notice with my stratagem choices, I ran an Eagle, an Orbital Strike, and then a turret. And all of these have relatively short cooldowns. If you're using your stratagems efficiently and the better you get with this loadout, you should almost always have one off cooldown to help support your team in whatever situation you're in. So now on to the horde clear build for bugs, and the main support weapon we're building around is the Flamethrower. Not only is this weapon extremely powerful, but it's probably the most fun weapon against bugs, just in my opinion, because it's pretty great just blasting flames into everything you see. And that tip I gave with the Plasma Punisher about always running away from enemies but kind of shoot in front of you, that also applies to the Flamethrower. Now for armor, I always wear a medic armor so that I have extra stims, but also so I get that +2 seconds. If I pop a stim, right, I can basically spray my Flamethrower for a full 5 seconds before needing to move around again. Stun grenades are also a must to use on entire groups and take them out, or use it on a charger and aim the Flamethrower directly at its leg. Now the Flamethrower can kill nearly everything except for Bile Titans, but it's also not necessarily the best against the green Bile Spitters, so I recommend using the Eruptor. Not only does the Eruptor usually one-shot the Bile Spitters, it also can one-shot Stalkers, and it's a gun that you can use at a much longer range compared to the Flamethrower. Now, in the gameplay footage in the background, I'm using the Plasma Punisher. It just got buffed recently, it's really fun to use right now, and it also works fine with this build, but I do think the Eruptor is slightly better because it does also close bug holes. And again, some of the other weapons I mentioned earlier are great, but you want to take a gun that staggers those green Bile Spitters and Stalkers, and can possibly be used at a longer range than the Flamethrower. Now, if you did go with the Eruptor, keep in mind you don't need the grenade pistol because the Eruptor will close the bug holes for you. And again, the Flamethrower can kill nearly everything except Bile Titans, so for our first stratagem pick, we're gonna take the supply pack, and this is gonna be a greedy supply pack. Not only will it keep your gas canisters full and your Flamethrower keep on flaming, it's also going to give you 8 extra stim packs for when you inevitably set yourself on fire, and also 8 extra stun grenades so you can handle all kinds of mobs and chargers. I absolutely think the supply pack is the best backpack with the Flamethrower because it completely extends its lifespan as well as your own, and with the Flamethrower you can literally solo bug breaches. It's absolutely insane. So now on to our other 2 stratagems, and we're going to be focusing these on taking down Bile Titans to make this loadout self-sufficient. The 500 kg, the Orbital Precision Strike, and the EAT are my 3 favorite options. Now, we only have 2 slots. Normally, I like to take the 500 kg and the Precision Strike, but when you have the Orbital Scatter modifier, you gotta take the EAT instead of the Precision Strike. Now, to kill a Titan with the 500 kg or the Precision Strike, you need to kite it exactly how I showed earlier with the Recoilless rifle. Throw the stratagem just in front of them or just underneath its head, run close enough to trigger its attack, and he'll be locked in place waiting for that 500 kilogram bomb to come in. But this time, instead of running diagonally away, try to run directly away from it so that it won't turn around and not take a direct hit from the 500 kg. And oftentimes you can dive away and live a lot closer than you would think to the 500 kg because the horizontal radius isn't really that large. I think it's only about 10 or 15 meters, so just run a little bit away and then dive, and you should usually take out the Bile Titan. So now that we covered both our bug builds, I hope you can see how I make my loadouts. I like to be really self-sufficient in almost every situation. Now, of course, if you have friends to play with, you can strategize a lot better and can run very unique loadouts to complement teammates. I'm actually going to post a full-on support loadout soon, running all defensive or teammate-based stratagems, and this build works really well on Helldive difficulty. So if you're interested in that, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Now on to the Automatons, and we have 2 important points we need to talk about when it comes to bots. The first one is that even the largest enemy the bots have to offer, which is the Factory Strider, does not require any sort of heavy armor penetration to destroy him. I posted a Factory Strider video that is linked in the description, which shows all the weak points and all of the support weapons against it. But the only thing the bots have that really needs an anti-tank to shoot down is the dropship. And you don't even actually have to shoot down dropships, but you do have to deal with the mobs that come out of it. Now, if you want to shoot down as many dropships as possible, then get 2 players with a team reload recoilless rifle. Shoot down every dropship you see. But like I said, you really don't need to do that to beat bot missions, so I'll cover that more in a second, why anti-tanks are not as good as you think against this enemy. But first, we gotta cover the second thing about bots, is that in general, bots just require you to learn their weak points and using a lot of cover against them, usually a random rock or a wall you find on the map, but also retreating and re-engaging later on, since they don't really chase you down that far or non-stop like the bugs do. If you retreat from bots, you pretty much normally can, you're gonna get away. But one of my favorite things is being able to throw a 380mm barrage in a heavy base or the command bunker objective and just completely move on to the next objective. If it ends up leaving a fabricator behind, just come back later to deal with it. You know, during the final Malevolent Creek Liberation campaign, we were easily full clearing maps for full XP by just throwing down stratagems, sniping fabricators and side objectives from a distance, and just move on, just go full clear the map. So with that being said, the best support weapons against bots are the autocannon, the laser cannon, and the anti-material rifle. Each of these have pros and cons compared to each other, but the main reason these weapons are better than any anti-tank option is just like I said. These can even deal with the largest bot that the enemies have to offer. But the key is they have much more ammo and can fire much faster and much more often for the large amount of those heavy enemies they spawn at you. But more importantly, they can also be used against devastators, which again, the amount of heavy and rocket devastators on higher difficulties is insane. And running a support weapon that can deal with those is great. Now, I'm gonna put a link to a Clay Aesthetics video that covers each bot weak point minus factory striders in the description if you're a newer player and don't know the bot weak points by now. Just keep in mind in that video, he actually posted it pretty close to the game's launch, so the specific weapons he covered in that video is a bit outdated, but none of the weak points have changed since then, so you will still find that video very useful. I'll also have another link to my disabling bots in the video description as well, covering some other spots that you can shoot on most of the bots as well. And I recommend watching both of those videos and using judgment at what spot on the robot you're gonna shoot, depending on what situation you're in. So the first build we're gonna be covering is with the autocannon, and I think the autocannon is the king against bots. It two-shots hulks in the eyes, it can be spammed at hordes of devastators, it can two-shot gunships if you aim at their engines, you can ricochet the shot into fabricators and snipe them from a distance, you can destroy the mortar and anti-air emplacements from a long distance. And by the way, you don't even need to shoot into the heat sink. You can shoot anywhere on those emplacements. Now, another reason the autocannon is so great is that on higher difficulty bot missions, usually you only have 3 stratagem slots. So having your backpack slot taken up really isn't a big deal because you just end up running an extra airstrike or an extra orbital stratagem. Now, as for the primary weapon we pair with the autocannon, I know in this video I've been running the Plasma Punisher the whole time because it's a weapon that just got buffed recently, but I gotta mention it feels uniquely strong against bots right now because of its splash radius and its stagger. You can actually stagger multiple devastators at once with this weapon if they're grouped together close enough, and like I said, that makes it uniquely powerful. Honestly, I think this weapon is stronger against bots than it is bugs. Now, you can also learn how to arc this gun to land on top of tanks, and it can actually take them out because the splash damage is hitting their heat sink. Now, given that we're running the autocannon for the long range engagements anyway, this is a great pairing for when you're at close to medium range. And again, just learn the arcing with this, and the more you play with it, the more you'll get used to it. So the first airstrike I like running is the Eagle airstrike. This can also take out tanks from the front with no need to get behind them for the heat sinks. But if you are behind a tank and you can hit the heat sink, don't waste an airstrike on it, just shoot right into its heat sink. But the Eagle airstrike is also great for cleaning up light and medium bases without actually having to go inside. And paired with a stun grenade, you can take out entire patrols or entire bot drops of devastators as well. Honestly, the Eagle airstrike is just one of the most versatile stratagems. I don't think it's required to win bot missions, but given that we're often lacking a stratagem, we only get 3 picks total, its versatility really makes it great to include as one of those 3. Now, the second stratagem I love running is the 380mm barrage. Now again, I got a barrage video linked in the description, go check that out. But a too long didn't watch description of the barrages is they have 3 uses. Number 1 is throw these at objectives like command bunkers or throw them in the middle of heavy bases to take out most of, if not all of the fabricators. And then the third thing is when the situation devolves and there is an entire army chasing you from one direction, throw the 380 as far as you can in that direction and say fuck that entire area. And this is particularly prevalent at defending the extraction zone. Now, one tip I recommend to using these when you're about to throw it into an objective or a heavy base is actually fire a shot off on that base, trigger the enemies, trigger the flare, trigger the bot drop, and as soon as you see the first one, then throw it in. Because if you throw this before doing that, a flare will go off and the reinforcements will usually land either halfway through or near the end that this is ending up going off, and there ends up being a whole amount of reinforcements after your barrage is done. Now, if you're lucky, you get a fourth stratagem. You can honestly just run whatever you want. I like the orbital precision strike because it's low cooldown and it can be paired with stun grenades to take out small groups, but it can also kill detector towers, which is very clutch to be able to take those out from outside. But cluster bombs are another great option since it'll kill all the little guys who can call in flares, and then you could just use your weapons to pick off all the big guys. Now, for our second build, this is honestly the more fun option in my opinion, and this is my favorite bot support weapon, and that is the laser cannon. Now, the laser cannon is criminally underrated. This is honestly my most used support weapon against bots, and it's very viable with pretty much every backpack. But I think what you guys are looking for is the tankiest and the most defensive backpack against automatons, and that is the ballistic shield. And the more I learn this playstyle, the more I honestly think it's better than the shield generator relay. And I'm also going to explain to you guys why it specifically synergizes well with the laser cannon. But before we do that, we should mention that the laser cannon can, again, deal with everything I mentioned that the autocannon can. It can destroy mortar emplacements, anti-air emplacements, hulks, devastators like the destroy dropship mission, tank and cannon turret heat sinks, fabricator striders, gunships, everything that the bots have to offer, this weapon can deal with. But the difference between the laser cannon and the autocannon or the anti-material rifle is the laser cannon requires a consistent beam. It requires a consistent shot for a couple seconds depending on what enemy you're targeting, rather than a quick shot here or there or a burst of damage like the autocannon or the anti-material rifle does. So when you're shooting the laser cannon, you really don't want to get staggered. And what this means is that heavy devastators, turrets, machine gun raiders, or just enemies that fire a lot of bullets that stagger you often is kind of a weakness for it. But that's why the ballistic shield is a uniquely good pairing, because the ballistic shield is great against all the enemies that stagger you often. In fact, it turns you into the heavy devastator and completely counters heavy devastators. And the more you play with this loadout, you'll get used to swapping between the laser cannon for all the rocket enemies, or the hulks, or the objectives, and then back to the ballistic shield for the machine gun enemies. And yes, we're obviously running the defender since it's the only primary right now that works with the ballistic shield, but also the defender is secretly an amazing weapon for dealing with berserkers. Now, for those of you that don't know, if you're simply walking away from a berserker, it cannot hit you. And yes, I just said walking, not running. Now, what this means is since the defender is a one-handed weapon, you can simply walk away from a berserker while shooting behind you. And it also is not that slow at killing them. It kills them pretty fast. It just requires a decent amount of bullets. Now, I have an in-depth laser cannon video coming out next on my channel. I will talk about the other backpacks that you can run with the laser cannon, as well as some more in-depth tips and tricks for using this weapon. I'll add that to the description of this video when I end up dropping that one. But since we're just including this specific ballistic shield loadout, let's talk about the third stratagem we use. And again, I gotta recommend the Eagle Airstrike. It is just such a versatile option for every reason I listed in the autocannon build, taking out tanks from the front, light and medium bases, and then just running away from them, or pair it with stun grenades to take out groups. And also make sure you bring the grenade pistol in this build, because if we only have 3 stratagems, we don't get to run a 380mm barrage for the heavy bases. You'll actually have to run in there and grenade pistol them all down. And again, if Joel is nice to you and you get lucky and get a 4th stratagem, bring the 380mm barrage. Alternatively, the orbital precision strike is honestly a great option as a 4th stratagem because it can take out detector towers and it has a short cooldown, and it's also very good with stun grenades for taking out small groups. So those are my 2 builds I recommend against automatons. And again, bots are an enemy all about learning their weak points, either picking a spot to defend or completely running away from them and just moving from objective to objective and full clearing the map and getting the max amount of XP. So that is my definitive guide on the meta this patch for Helldivers 2. The meta is the friends we make along the way. It's about designing a build that can be self-sufficient or synergize with your teammates. Be sure to pick stratagems that your teammates didn't, so that you can be versatile for the different situations you encounter. Now, if you found this guide helpful, please drop a like on this video to help spread my content to other Helldivers, and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm out.